Now, trust is a very interesting concept. It's something so intangible, and yet it is the foundation for everything, how we make decisions, whether we choose one person or a company, a product or a service over another. And it has changed over the years. And clearly, we are talking a lot about becoming the trusted authority, meaning by choice, not necessarily by title. But today, we are exploring the topic of trust on a bigger scale. We are talking with somebody who's actually specialized in trust. And I cannot wait to explore firstly how he got there, but then also how he supports his clients in this next world of work. With no further ado, Severin De Wit is our guest today. Thank you so much for being here, Severin.
Petra, thank you for inviting me to your show. It's quite an exciting change to be on the other side of the microphone where I'm giving an interview instead of taking one.
Absolutely. Now, we have connected, I don't know how many months ago, and it's been quite a journey in the making to get here. And I'm really curious to get all your insights, your learnings, and your experiences, because you've actually specialized in trust. So the question is, what led you there? How did you choose the specialization?
You know, trust has always been something that has intrigued me on a personal level. It's this intangible yet incredibly powerful force that shapes our relationships and interactions. I found myself wondering about how trust works and why it's so vital in our lives. I'm thinking of trust as air. It's like air, unnoticed when present, but its absence leaves us gasping. So when I dug deeper into the subject, I realized that trust has a profound impact, not only on individuals, but also on organizations and society as a whole. Trust is this invisible glue, if you like, that holds everything together and enables us to collaborate and to connect and to thrive. So, as you know, I've had meanwhile 72 conversations about trust with experts all over the globe. So I immersed myself in extensive research to basically unravel the mysteries, if you like, of trust. It has been the last 3 years an incredible journey of discovery and learning. And the more I explored, the more I realized how significant trust is in the various contexts and how it can make or break relationships and opportunities.
Absolutely. Now, I became a little bit familiar with trust and the research behind it when I researched for my own book. And it was initially about personal branding, but then the whole conversation shifted in terms of how to build authority, how to influence when you don't necessarily have the official title, because it was around the 2020, 2021 mark when people started to work from home. So you don't have the face-to-face interactions. Companies have also restructured. They are less hierarchical and more collaborative. And I found research from Rachel Botsman. I came across her insights, and she also defines reputational capital as basically our future asset. But I'm curious, with all your research that you have done, how do you define trust?
You see, trust isn't just a word we throw around. When we talk about trust, we mostly refer to interpersonal trust, which is all about having that mutual belief in someone's reliability, integrity, and positive intentions. It's about feeling confident and comfortable in being vulnerable. It's a word that often appears when you talk about trust, knowing that the other person will treat you with honesty, dependability, and ethical behavior. That is what trust in my definition. For instance, if you trust a taxi driver to safely bring me to a destination without exposing me to any danger, it's not solely based on his honesty or dependability or ethical behavior, but rather on his competence and skill in driving, of course. And this highlights that trust can extend beyond interpersonal aspects and includes various dimensions depending on the I would say the specific context or the relationship. And so Rachel, for example, you mentioned her, she is very much into interpersonal trust. And that's built on real experiences and consistent actions. And trust is more than interpersonal trust. It's also institutional trust, if you like. That institutional trust refers to the confidence and the reliance placed in organizations or in institutions. And that is based on their reputation, their track record, and the demonstrated accountability. It's about having faith in their systems, in the policies, and the ability to act in the best interest of those they serve. That's institutional trust, different from interpersonal trust.
Absolutely. And, this is a perfect segue into the next question, because you also mentioned institutional trust is different. And Rachel Botsman, what she said is how we trust has changed over the years. So initially, when we were all living in a village, we knew each other, and when you screw me over, I'm not ever give you money. And then we have moved into cities. So institutions like banks and religion and so forth have taken over the role of the connector between supply and demand, basically. But this next iteration now with technology, tech platforms actually take the role of being the trusted connector, because when we grew up, and I'm sure you have had a similar experience, my parents always said, don't get in a car with a stranger. But now what are we doing when we take an Uber? Well, we don't know this person either, but it's transparent. We see the ratings, we see where we're going, we see how far away it is. What kind of changes have you seen over the years when it comes to trust? How do we build it? How do we destroy it?
You're very much right. Over the years, trust has taken quite a fascinating journey, hasn't it? Back in the day, a handshake was often considered a reliable indicator of somebody's character and integrity. An handshake is a simple yet powerful gesture that conveys a sense of honor and commitment. People relied on the notion that a person's word was their bond, and a handshake was enough to seal or deal, if you like, or establish trust. And of course, as times changed and complexities grew, people started seeking more formal methods to ensure trust and protect their interests. With increasing, like you just mentioned, complexities and uncertainties in the world, people have experienced instances of broken trust or deception. And as a result, trust has adapted and learned to be more cautious, like going through a crash course in self-defense, if you like. I mean, trust has developed mechanisms to protect itself from being easily broken or taken advantage of. People may now rely on background checks, legal agreements, or other safeguards before they fully placing their trust in something or somebody. That was different in the past.
Absolutely. And, obviously, I find it's easier to trust a person because we can see their gestures, their features, how they behave, and so forth. But at the same time, we also need to have trust in companies and in brands. What is the difference between building trust as a person and then extending that to a business, especially if we say we have a startup and we only have 5 people in the team, and all of a sudden we become a scale up and have 500 people? How can we keep the trust when it's beyond the one person?
I don't think trust in a different, whether you're a startup or a large company, is actually very different. Mm-hmm. The traits of a good trust producing somebody is the same, whether you are small, whether you are big. And in fact, interpersonal trust isn't that different from institutional trust. It is especially the reliability, the vulnerability. I mentioned that earlier. I think it's one of the key words in any trust discussion and any trust literature is the word vulnerable. It's to make yourself vulnerable. If there is no vulnerability, there is no trust. And whether you are a leader of a big company or you're talking about interpersonal trust with friends or relatives, it's all about that vulnerability, your openness to be vulnerable. And that is what, in its core, is what trust is about.
Fascinating. But then at the same time, trust seems to be perceived differently by different groups. How can we bridge the gap between the academic perspective and the research that they do and the viewpoints of the public?
Okay, let me see. This is a question where trust is perceived differently by various groups. and how we can bridge the gap, right?
Yes.
Yeah, the thing about trust is that it can vary a lot depending on personal experiences, right? Culture and even how people see the world. And academics, you mentioned academics, they study it all deep and serious, while regular folks like me form our opinions through everyday life. But here's the deal. We need to find a way to bring these different perspectives together. Trust is way too complex for just one viewpoint to capture it all. So the question then is, how can we bridge the gap? Well, it's all about communication and understanding. Academics can make, to start with, their research less complex and more relatable, and we can delve into their work to get a better grasp on trust. Actually, in the podcast, I'm trying to get those different views to come together to get a broader, more complete picture of trust. So I try to catch the diversity of perspectives and have some in-depth discussions to understand trust in a way that works for everyone.
Now, you mentioned something really profound, and that's communication. In the end, this is also what I found out when I did my research for a trusted authority. It comes down to being the translator and the connector of two worlds. So how can you translate what you know and your area of expertise, which is usually technical knowledge, in a way that resonates with others? So you are meeting at the same level. You use storytelling, metaphors, analogies, rather than throwing all the tech jargon out and hoping something will stick and you look really smart and good, because that's like the opposite how to build trust. And you're right, academics very much need to take this step further and translate their research and their insights into everyday language. And what do their insights mean for our everyday actions? So I love this tip. I love this tip. That this next question is a bit not controversial, but clearly there, especially big institutions, from religion to government and everything in between, have lost trust, not necessarily lost trust, but they've had a lot of trust breaches, let's put it that way. Right. What can we do to rebuild the trust once we have lost it, or it's been damaged with one or another action, or even the different representation of an organization?
Rebuilding trust following trust breaches by large institutions or brands, I think involves a comprehensive process. As I had an interview with Harvard Business School professor Sandra Suscher, and she highlighted that. And I actually, one of my more interesting interviews I had, and she emphasized three crucial elements to restore trust when broken. First of all, apology. That's the easy part. To demonstrate the understanding of what went wrong. And then secondly, you have to provide clear details about that you understand what was the cause of the breach, that you understand that where you apologize for. And lastly, you have to provide details about the actions that you take to prevent similar mistakes in the future. Actually, the wonderful example she gave was about the Oscars a couple of years ago. I think it was was PwC. I'm not sure whether it's one of the giants. They were in charge of the Oscars from all the aspects. And then when the winner was announced, a mistake was made. This was like La La Land, and it was then another, or vice versa. In any case, something went wrong, and she gives that as an example of a very effective restoring of broken trust, because what PwC or the organization did was, first of all, apologize and says this shouldn't have happened. And what was the reason? The reason was somebody was on his mobile phone. And so the third one to repair, the obvious one that you and I would think of immediately is, okay, next time we let everybody collect his mobile phone, so no more mobile phones. But what they really did was something extraordinary, which she thinks helps to restore the trust best, was that they, for the next Oscars, had a new rule. Everybody, including the cleaning man or the CEO, everyone has to know who was the number one, the number two, and the three by heart. Right? So anytime they opened a piece of paper and seeing, oh, okay, the winner is, and then, hey, think, oh, this is incorrect. It can't be true. Then he knew or she knew that what she learned, and then she would forget what's on the paper and actually say who was the winner. So that was a nice example, I thought, about how to restore trust effectively. So, Sandra said that's a sincere and a meaningful apology. That's a crucial step in rebuilding trust, because it shows and demonstrates humility and that you're accountable, and that you are generally desire to make that change.
I think this is so important also for leaders to realize that, because we often think, or leaders think, we need to know it all and we need to have all the right answers. But then what we just mentioned before, there's so much uncertainty and complexity. We cannot know it all, and making mistakes is human. The worst thing is to just push it under the rug and never ever mention it again, or blame somebody else. Even worse, addressing it and saying, yeah, it was a mistake, and this is and this is because it happens, and this is what we're doing about it. It's making the whole process transparent, and this is also one of the traits how you can actually build trust. You show people behind the curtains. You lift how the sausage is made, basically, and
yes,
and don't have secrets, and the smoke and mirrors are all of a sudden a process, a method, a reason, and we can reason with our own emotions, and often being upset with somebody or really angry because he did something. But if we can put logic over emotions, we can also restore the relationship and the partnership, isn't it?
Yeah, the word that you use is correct. Apart from what we earlier mentioned, vulnerability, a word that also often occurs, especially also in broken trust, is transparency, clarity. And I think the need to be proactive in your approach to address the underlying issues. And so it's more than just apology. It involves implementing robust safeguards, establishing rigorous protocols, and you are continuously monitoring and improving processes. And then by doing so, you are able, given time, to restore trust. Time is also of the essence, because an apology won't do it, and tomorrow we have forgotten. It's the same as if I have a quarrel with my spouse. That takes time, right? It takes time to restore trust. It's not something you do overnight, and you have to show that you are serious, that you have learned from your mistakes, so to say.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of trust, we want to look into the future, get our crystal ball, and look into what does the future look like. Like, there's been so much discussion around, obviously, we're currently in the midst of Web 3.0, and the future of work is moving from knowledge economy to relationship economy. What is Web 4.0, especially in a world where everyone's got access to tools like AI, but also deep fakes all of a sudden become totally mainstream? How can we build trust with an audience and make sure that our head is not put on a different body and somebody's talking in our voice, that they don't trust this and trust us as an actual person? What is the future?
Yeah, I wish I knew, but what I can say is the future of trust, I think, is set to see some exciting changes, because technology keeps advancing. You mentioned Web 4.0. In the era of Web 4.0, where AI, for example, is everywhere and deepfakes bring new challenges, I think trust will be extremely important, even more important so than it already is. And to protect the trust, we'll need strong ways to verify and authenticate information and responsible oversights, in this case of AI. It's crucial for technology experts and policymakers and society as a whole to work together to use technology ethically, improve cybersecurity, build trust in a digital world, and stuff like that. And again, here is transparency important. Being transparent and helping people gain digital skills will be essential for navigating these changes. In other words, the skill to recognize that something is wrong, that something what is presented as the truth in fact isn't. And that is an extreme challenge for new technologies, because it gets smarter and bigger and more sophisticated for any human person to recognize. If you see what is going on at the moment with AI-generated content, in no time we will see our politicians saying things and we say, "Oh, whoa, that can't be true." And how do we know it's actually her or it's actually him? So these challenges will give reason for looking very sharply to trust. And that's why I'm so confident that giving attention to trust, what I do with Trust Tech, what you do with your podcast, or what many others do, and talking with all kinds of different people about the intricacies of trust is so important, so that people will recognize, can I trust what I see? Can I trust what I hear? And that has never been the case. At least we were reluctant to say, okay, what I read here is nonsense, and then maybe you can check it, or you Google it, or you read the book and you say, oh, it's not there. But with these new technologies, that becomes a real challenge.
It definitely becomes a real challenge, but it keeps us on our toes. Hopefully we stay curious, ask a lot of questions, and as you said, just we don't have to have the one answer, but we want to curate different insights and experiences, and this is where we can find a collective answer, and also we move as we gain new insights and new knowledge. Well, this has been nothing but fascinating. Thank you so much for all your insights and your wisdom. Now, super curious, how do you support your clients with? And of course, where can everyone find you and connect with you further?
It's an interesting question, Petra, that you asked me, because so far in the last 3 years, I have been on the receiving end, if you like, of information. I was the one who asked the questions. I got very interesting guests with extremely interesting insights, different angles, different subjects, and I'm really not done with it. So last week I discussed with my wife, and my wife asked me, "Have you become an expert on trust yourself?" I said, "Well, that I would not like to confirm that, but I'm thinking of how can I work together with some friends I have here who are also very keen on trust, to help people to rebuild trust in organizations or in relations, and see how I can use the information I have got over the last 75 plus conversations I had. I only published 72. The next one is with Kevin Werbach about talking about technology. It's about trusted in technology. And so that will be on the 2nd of July. So how can I transform that, what I've learned, into actually advice? I'm still working on it, and not yet confident that I should be given advice rather than receiving advice.
But to be honest, this is one of the best ways to also develop your own signature framework and your own IP, by gathering other people's insights and then still curate the one common denominator, the three patterns, whatever you are seeing, and then make it easy for others to repeat it. Like, what is a common theme on how to rebuild trust? These are the three elements that have come through all the time. Like, I'm super curious where you will take it, and I don't think there's the one answer yet, and never will be. So in a second, you can develop and then refine as you go your framework. You will be a tremendous help for clients, for organizations, and for leaders.
Thank you very much for that trust that you have in me. I don't want to break it.
You won't, because in a second you're transparent, say, you know what, I don't know everything, and that's okay. I'll take you with me on the journey. I share as I go. If I change my mind tomorrow because things have come up and we know different information, guess what? I'm going to change my opinion too. And I think this is what we need to be more open about. We don't have to take this one direction and stay with it forever. Like, hopefully things change and our opinions and our viewpoints also change with that. So I'm excited.
Couldn't agree more, Petra. Couldn't agree more.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad we finally had this conversation, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to learning more from you, from your research, and also put all the links how to connect with you and listen to your podcast in the show notes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.